three big parts of Disney Empire are linear television, which is primarily ESPN at this point. The second thing you said is streaming. So Disney Plus, they're gonna end up owning all of Hulu. And then the big one is, and the Disney parks is kind of, I was saying before we record, they're cash cow. So revenue breakdown, I don't want to bore people with the numbers, but the TLDR is this. If the media stuff, the linear and streaming, does 65% of the revenue, but only 35% operating profit. Parks and experience is the opposite. It's 35% of revenue, but 65% of operating profit. And all you need to know about that is that when you get in that park, those markups are so obscene, right? And like the in-person spend is so obscene. And I did that tweet about margin call, and I had a Disney insider actually message me. And he goes, the way that Disney looks at it is called the Disney wallet. They're like, no matter how much you spend to just even enter the park, it doesn't actually affect how much you spend once you're in the park. So their entire purpose now is like, how do you jack up as much as possible before somebody even enters the park? Because it's all margin. Everything is margin at that point.
Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We've got the three boys back together. Jack Butcher, Trung Phan, Bilal Zaidi. What's going on, boys? Trung, you just got back from Disneyland. How was that, mate?
Dude, remember how I was telling you guys cutting vegetables for my wife? Like, not metaphorically, it's not like a sexual thing, like literally cutting vegetables. He just texted me.
You say not a sexual thing?
So I just got a text message. She's like, I told you not to cut the potatoes. They're going to oxidize. I can't do anything right. Anyway. But, okay, hold on a second.
Go and put them in some water, Trung.
All right, hold on a second. I'll be
Food
back.
influencer Jack. He's legit going, bro. What is going on? All right, what we do is, Rafa, we could keep this in, but we put in some music, like a little 5-10 second little clip, like elevator music, and then we'll be back in 3, 2, 1. Bro, I can't believe it's there.
Here he is.
All right,
Jesus
dude,
Christ.
Tee it up again. Jesus Christ, man.
We started from the beginning. We could just keep it
thanks,
going.
Rafa.
Leave that in. Leave that in.
Leave it in.
No, leave it in. We had
Just keep
elevator
going.
music.
Hey,
Keep
guys,
going. Elevator music.
guys,
It's
we're
good.
in. We're in.
Cool.
Rafa, did Rafa do the elevator music? I guess
I
I'll
told
find
him
out when I'm listening.
yeah, we said elevator
Don't
music.
leave it all, people. This is how the stew is made. Literally, this is how the stew is made. You cut the potatoes and you put them in water first.
All right, Trung, Disneyland. Tell us, because we're going to be talking about Hollywood actor strike and some Disney stuff, but let's talk about your time in Disneyland, Anaheim's finest.
All right, do you want to tee up the other stuff we'll talk about too? Because I'm about to cook.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Bob Iger willing to sell ESPN, Disney's head, Hollywood actor strike. There's talk about Hollywood wanting to keep the AI replicas of actors forever, which is kind of a crazy thought. And then we're going to let Jack cook on the Threads versus Twitter debate. We didn't have him here for that, so we want to get his take because he's got a big Instagram following on visualized value, so we're going to talk about that. If we get to it, we're going to be talking about creative fundraising for presidential campaigns, taken from the affiliate playbook. So we'll see if we get to that last one. But yeah, go on, Trung. Tell us what's going on in Disneyland.
Well, let me begin with this. I went to Disneyland this past weekend. Shout out to my boy Romeen, who had a sick conference called Game Time in a sports investor conference. You know, with me, I double dab everything. I'm like, if I'm gonna be in Newport, bring the fam, hit Disneyland the next day, which is exactly what happened. But I'm gonna have to ask you, Bilal, first, because before the recording, I asked, when did you last go to Disneyland? So Jack Butcher has never been to Disneyland, people. Mr. Visualizing Value and Branding and IP has never been. So arguably the greatest branding operation ever. So I want to get Jack's thoughts, but first, Bilal, when were you last at Disneyland?
Yeah, so the first time was 1996, young, fresh-faced Bilal with his mum and sister. But the last time was actually, I think it was almost 7 years ago, because we did a Google sales conference there. So they shut down the park, and we just had a bunch of sales, Google people from all over the country, and it was like drinks allowed.
Disneyland for you guys?
Yeah,
0% interest rate phenomenon.
yeah, exactly. It was actually kind of fun. You got to go on the rides, but then they would be kind of like
shut down Disney.
It was pretty fun.
Do you know how much it cost?
Incredible.
How much did it cost?
I have no idea.
Throw a number. It must have been $30 to $40 million to shut down Disneyland, dude.
I have no idea, man. I'd be making up a number. I mean, it was cheaper than the Vegas one was crazier because that was.
How much did that cost? I need to know. I need reference
I
points.
legit, I would be making up a number. I have no
Okay,
idea.
so what did you do? Okay, I want to ask this. What was your memory of the 96 trip?
96 was like taking selfies before selfies with Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse or whatever, because she was, she was up there at that age. I was about 8 years old. And then, well, it was just like being in America first time, like Universal Studios, going to the little earthquake thing. But Disneyland itself was just like, I was doing all the kid stuff. So I
you
don't
went to
remember too
Florida.
much.
You went to Disney World.
No, sorry. No, I went to the California one because
you
there's
went to
Universal
California.
Studios
Okay.
there as well.
All right. And then the Google one. And Jack, do you have any appetite to go to Disneyland? Like, what is your? I mean, I'm sure now with 2 kids, it's on the radar.
Yeah, definitely. If it's demanded, I will consider it, but not personally, no.
Not personally.
Have you, Celia, ever talked about going to Disneyland?
No, not yet. Not yet, but yeah, for sure. If it's if the IP becomes popular in the household, I'm sure we're gonna have to.
Well, this is why my trip to Disneyland was a strategic mistake. My son has seen one Disney movie ever, Cars. Doesn't care about any about the Disney IP, about the characters. So I kind of shot myself in the foot because exactly like Jack said, I know in the future he's going to want to go after he's consumed the entire catalog, right?
You could have checked a few off the list, yeah.
So now I'm going to have to go back, and I just dropped a G, which is what the entire point. This is like, you talk to anybody about Disneyland now, this is the number one question. How everything is so freaking expensive. And I went on a day trip, but like the typical family of 4 to go to Disneyland is like $4,000 to $5,000 now. We're talking housing, transportation, day pass, and the crazy markups you get in the park itself. I mean, you guys are probably familiar with people complaining about the prices, yeah?
Yeah, it's mad. Jack, you're on mute.
Yeah, of course. Just like cinema prices on steroids, right?
But somebody tweeted, I don't know, well, Ralph can pull it up. I did a tweet of from Jack knows his favorite line from Margin Call. We're selling to willing buyers at the current fair market price.
Yeah, that was good.
Like, like a bottle of water, like popcorn, and like Mickey Mouse ears for $160 is like, this is the market price. I gotta say though,
they've got you, man.
They got me. And let me talk about my experience and my summary before I get into more of the details. So I was mad hungover. I went out real hard the night before, which is not advisable. Like, so dumb, right? My wife the entire morning just looked at me. I was like I was at Tomorrowland in a line, and it looked like I was pretty close to chuffing. This would have been like the worst memory for my son to see his like old man chuff at Autopia, and just have to hold it together. Dude, it was just so grim that I'm like, there's only one way to beat back this hangover. I had a cheeseburger at 9:30. It's like, this is it, right? You gotta have the cheeseburgers and fries at 9:30. But it's hot, lines are long, it's just packed. I mean, there's a Wall Street Journal report that came out 10 days ago that said that they think that the parks are less packed because they track waiting times in the lines. It's like, the waiting times are much shorter, which suggests that the parks are less packed. I can tell you right now, the park was not less packed when I went on Saturday, like this last Saturday. But I say all that because I loved that experience. And ever since, I literally can't stop talking to my wife about it. I'm like, that was incredible. Like that 8 hours, with half of it, I was just dehydrated and like ready to crawl on the balls. Like, my memory of it is already so positive. And they just crush it, man. I gotta say, the Star Wars exhibit they did is unbelievable. They spent $1 billion on Star Wars. And when you go there, I don't know if I'm familiar guys with the storytelling element of Disney. Do you guys know like the background of why he created it and like the Imagineers that go and build it?
Not really
specifically, but it's just to expand the universe of all the content they put on a flat screen. Is that about right?
Yeah, exactly. In 1955 is when the original Disneyland opened, and Jack nailed the exact thesis. He's like, how do you recreate literally watching a film, but like in person? So what's so interesting about the park design is like, what are like stuff we know from films from the 50s, right? Like, like you do flash cuts between scenes, mood lighting, clear plots and narrative arcs. Like that's like Disney, literally the mind of a single person. He's like, how do I create all these in physical manifestations, right? So something that's super fascinating is when you go to the parks, so I think there's 8 lands. There's like Adventureland, Tomorrowland, New Orleans. But the point is like, he does those elements from filmmaking because a lot of these Imagineers are former set designers and film creators, right? So when you walk between parks, like they're like, how do we integrate their physical sense that they're changing scenery? The roads always change, and they're always a little bit bumpy when you move between parks. It's signaling to you that you're switching between lands, right? And like between one land and the other, you can't even see the other lands. The way they structure the mountains and the trees, it's like very like the psychology that goes into building this place is incredible, which takes me to Star Wars. So I've left this thing. The lineup for Star Wars is 90 minutes, right? I didn't do it because that's just obscene. But you roll in there, and something they did, which from the psychological angle, which is really smart about Star Wars, is like it's not based on any of the planets that you know from the films. They made it. They found some lore in the Star Wars universe that wasn't very popular, and their purpose was we wanted every single person to create their own lore when they get there, right? It's like if it was a Luke Skywalker story, then you're like, oh, I'm living Luke Skywalker's story in Tatooine. But instead, they found this random land that was in one of the comic book Star Wars stories, and they keep you, everything's in characters. There's stormtroopers walking around, like asking you where the rebels are. And it's like, have you seen anything suspicious? And I'm like, bro, I saw some suspicious stuff, but I don't think it's what you're looking for. But I think on that point, just the psychology is interesting. And the only other thing I touch on is the business model stuff. Like, are you guys familiar with the Disney conglomerate model? Like, do you guys know how they kind of make money?
A little bit, Bob.
Yeah, no, the entire business. Like
Just the whole business. Well, I was going to ask you, how does this compare to the other parts, like the movies, the streaming, like merchandise and this? Like, I'm sure there's other parts I'm not even thinking of, but like, how does this fit in the picture in terms of like profitability, essentially?
Dude, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. So you know the three big ones. Like the three big parts of Disney Empire are linear television. So they get, which is primarily ESPN at this point. So they're all part of this cable bundle. The second thing you said is streaming. So Disney Plus, they're gonna have to. They're gonna end up owning all of Hulu.
That's what they're trying to go into even harder, right? Yeah.
And then the big one is, and the Disney Parks is kind of, I was saying before we record, they're cash cow. So Disney Parks and Entertainments, Disney Parks and Experiences, which includes Disney Cruises and all their physical in real life stuff. So revenue breakdown. I don't want to bore people with the numbers, but the TLDR is this. If the media stuff, the linear and streaming, does 65% of the revenue, but only 35% operating profit. Parks and Experiences is the opposite. It's 35% of revenue, but 65% of operating profit. And all you need to know about that is that when you get in that park, those markups are so obscene, right? And like the in-person spend is so obscene. And I did that tweet about margin call, and I had a Disney insider actually message me. And he goes, yeah, it's like the way that Disney looks at it is called the Disney wallet. They're like, this is a very fascinating psychology, actually. No matter how much you spend to just even enter the park, it doesn't actually affect how much you spend once you're in the park. So their entire purpose now is like, how do you jack up as much as possible before somebody even enters the park? Because it's all margin. Everything is margin at that point. So the ticket price, just based on inflation, should be like $50 to $60 now. I mean, they've added rides and experiences, but now it's like $250 for a day ticket. And I think that's doubled in the past decade. And another thing that they've really done in the past 2 years is they did something called the Genie Plus Pass. I mean, blah. The lines at Disney, tell me what you remember. What's funny is that you did it as a kid and you did it without lines, right? Well, you did it with Google, no lines.
Google, it was still lines though, but it was quick. It was quick line. And by the way, you said earlier to estimate, and I did the quick math after. I think it was like 10,000 people, roughly. So it was like 8 to 10,000 people, I think. I'm estimating. Yeah. That's like all the salespeople. So even if they spend 100 per person, which I'm sure is way more than that, right? It's probably 200. 100 per person, I think, would be like 10 mil. So I think it would be probably 10 to 20 mil. If it was, I think the Vegas one was probably more because that was a dangerous one. Yeah.
Down Disneyland. It's so obscene.
I think they do it for corporate events. I think I've heard of like banks doing it and stuff. When you got enough people, it kind of makes
it. Okay, so when you rolled though with 10,000 people, that's probably half the capacity, right? So you're doing the equivalent. The line wait is probably 10, 15 minutes versus 30, 40, which is what it is.
Yeah.
2 years ago, they introduced something called the Genie Plus. And apparently 60% of people use it. It's connected to a phone app. So what it does is it tells you the wait time for every ride, and then you can start kind of reserving.
Oh, that's sick.
Dude, that's pure margin. It's like
Yeah.
$30 per person gets added
That's
on top
SaaS
of
margins,
the
baby.
Dude,
You know what I mean?
SaaS margins, right?
Yeah.
And apparently, like, I think the happiness rate with it is like 90% of people have used it. It's like, I would definitely use it again. So it creates like, there's these tiers of visitors to Disneyland, right? There's like people that are willing to pay the $30. So people are like, it's kind of turning into like, it's this inequality thing. And there are people that pay the $1,500 a year, which is an annual pass. But those people, so they're interesting. Disneyland has a very awkward relationship with the people that pay for the annual pass. So they'll come 100 times a year, right? And they give you the $1,500. But these people don't spend a ton of money to get there. They're clogging up the lines. And they also complain a lot, right? They're like, "Oh, we're Disney lifers. Like you're kind of screwing us." Whereas if you get out of towners like Trunk Stunner, like I'm like, "Oh, corn dogs. Yeah, I'll have 6 of them, right? I'm hungover. I'll have 6 corn dogs. What is that? $200? Yeah, whatever. Give them to me." So like, there's a balance that happens. But the thing that's really good about the Genie Pass, I don't know if you ever lived in their app, but the app really helps push people around the park. So like they'll tell you, "Oh, by the way, this ride that has a way shorter line, so why don't you move there?" So they get to manage the park. But what I will say about that whole experience is this. Going back to Walt Disney, he wanted to create these fantasies and you felt like you were somewhere different. I think there's something that, I don't know what the end result will be, but now that they've mediated through your phone, it kind of takes away the magic, right? It's like, that suspension of disbelief is kind of going away. And the one thing, so there's this tension here where they have to manage and milk people for money, but then the magic has to also stay. So if you read the reviews on like TripAdvisor, people will complain about the prices and still give it like 4 stars, right? It's just like they still feel that magic, but I wonder how far they can push that. And back to how important their business is in terms of their entire revenue pie, 35% revenue by 65% operating profit. As they go into streaming, which is losing a ton of money, and like the cable bundle disintegrates, whereas ESPN is not guaranteed money anymore to 80 million households, which is how the cable bundle works. I wonder what's going to happen, because the only certain thing is the parks, or they're just going to have to keep milking and make the experience so much worse. So those are my thoughts.
That's amazing. Yo, Trung, did you know about the magic moment hack at Disneyland?
No, tell me.
Well, because Melina, I think they might have got rid of it because I was just Googling it now. But Melina grew up in that area, right? She grew up in Orange County. So she had the yearly pass thing. So her and her best friend, when they were like 12, would go there every weekend or whatever it was. And so she told me this recently. What they would have to do is when they go with a group of friends, they would have to like go to an office and say it was one of their birthdays, which they didn't even check back in the day if it was like a ID or whatever. And so they would say it was their birthday, they get a little badge, and then they would go up to the line, the front of the line, and you'd say to the person at the line, "I want a Disney magic moment," or "I want a magic moment." And they would be like, "Oh, okay." It would be like a little nod, and then you'd get straight in. So that was this thing. And then apparently it went, and I was talking to her about it a few weeks ago, and she said, "Yeah, I don't know if they still do it." And it looks like it went TikTok viral, obviously, in recent times. And because of that, like it's now, they had to pull it because obviously people will be abusing it.
Dude, we need Melina on this pod, man.
Yeah, just
so
to
she
get
had
that
annual
insight.
pass.
She did,
Wait,
yeah.
Well, let me add 2 more quick things about the parks business. I mean, obviously way more than just Anaheim, right? They have it in Florida. They have one in
Paris.
Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Paris. But the other one I went to is Tokyo. Disney Sea. Unbelievable. So Tokyo is actually the only one where they don't own it outright. They licensed the IP. But I'll tell you something interesting about the parks business in Paris that you mentioned and the parks business in Tokyo. So the Paris one has been a disaster, for the Paris location. And I'll tell you guys, this is actually interesting from a vacation standpoint. It kind of ties into our Europe chat, right? And I don't think any of us said Europe was the best city. I think Bilal said London. I think
What,
Jack,
Paris, you're saying? That Paris was the best
when we
city?
said the best London cities, what did you say, Jack? You said somewhere in Spain, right?
He said Florence.
Florence.
Oh, Florence, yeah. He said Florence. I said Barcelona. Bilal was a homer. He said London.
Had to keep it real.
Yeah. So the original, so Disney Euro, which is Disneyland owns half of, or Disney the company, they're supposed to do it in Spain, which mimic the California weather. By the time Michael Eisner in the early 1990s, the superstar CEO of Disney, he wanted the luxury of being in Paris, right? But turns out it's not the smartest move, because why would you put Disneyland in like the city that people like? They had 6 hotels at Disneyland, but nobody wants to stay in Disneyland, Europe, Paris, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you want to
it's a
stay in
day
the city
trip.
or whatever.
You want
Yeah.
to be in Paris. Like, how are you going to compete
You want it to
20
be a
miles outside of
destination.
Paris? Exactly. So Paris has had an interesting, like, it's lost money since the beginning, still paying down its debt. And all its profit that it ever would have had, it actually kicks up to Disney as a royalty. So, like, it's been like a pretty big disappointment. But I
Well,
just
in
think it's funny
Tokyo,
how
you
you
said, Trung, you said in
Tokyo,
Tokyo it's licensed?
license, yeah. So Japan's like, no. We understand the Japanese population.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a thing about Tokyo, which actually nails this point. Tokyo is obviously also an amazing city, but Disney Sea is far away enough and in quite a secluded area where it does not feel, it feels like a true excursion. And you know that MF is clean. If you think Disneyland Anaheim is clean, Disneyland Tokyo is like the most smallest place in the world, man.
Did you go to the toilets there? Did they have the most incredible Japanese bathrooms with the,
dude, heated
the
seats,
automatic
man.
ones?
That's all
Oh
I'm
my God.
at the boudettes.
Bro, in Mexico
Unbelievable.
City, there was a Japanese cafe that I'd go to every day just to use their bathroom, just to go sit. Sometimes I didn't even need to use it. I would just go read my phone. I'd be like, I'm just going to wait for my cappuccino in here. But no, once you go to a Japanese toilet, it's hard to go back. It's very difficult. It's like luxury,
It is, right?
luxury living. But yeah, so that was incredible. Anything else on that before we talk about Disney and the ESPN thing and
I'd love
Hollywood stuff?
if you guys have any top line thoughts on Disneyland or Disney
Jack,
IP.
anything else, mate?
No, that was a good trip summary, Trung. We got a lot of
I appreciate
Disney
that.
threads to hit.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the one thing I will say with Jack, and hopefully you do get pinged because I want you to feel the experience. Also, like both sides, so we can joke about it. Because I want Jack to live tweet us in our group chat while he's in Disneyland. He's like, I cannot believe the shit I'm paying for right now.
Also, Jack would be there appreciating it because he loves the franchise more than anyone.
Jack loves the franchise.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say is like how they do they've figured out the loop of the parent-child, right? Like nostalgia. Like my experience of that, like how do you create this? Like I brought my son into the world. Like think about that. I brought my kid into the Disney World because I had gone 25 years ago. I don't remember anything from that trip. All I knew is that I went and it was important that we went, like, especially as an immigrant family, right? And when I left the park, when you get a picture at the front, I saw probably a family of 30 Latinos. They spent 30 minutes getting all these photos. I'm like, man, like these guys, like Disney, they've cracked it, man. Like I walked away, like even though all the shit, all the negatives I'm saying about that, I was like, I walked away, like I brought my son into this, and like, and feeling it both sides, going as a kid and bringing your kid in, like you get it. My kid still talks about it. He's just like, oh man, I really like Disneyland. It's like I don't get, like he just fucking liked it, right? And,
has he been to any of the others, like Harry Potter or like what are the other?
No,
I
he hasn't been.
no,
He's been a couple. He's been at amusement parks, which is like very different
not the
than
same
a
as
theme
Disney,
park,
though.
right? Like Walt Disney's whole point was like when you go to an amusement park, you do a roller coaster and they try to rip your face on these like the crazy games, right? He's like theme park is literally themed, right? He's like, here's the theme of this land. You're in Star Wars. This is the theme. It feels like you live there. That's the memory you're gonna have. But yeah, that's my only thoughts.
Love it. All right, great summary there, Trung. Let's quickly talk, before we talk about the Hollywood actor strike, you mentioned briefly there about the three lines there. So linear TV, streaming, and then theme park being the cash cow. But you mentioned briefly before that Disney are willing to sell ESPN because that's pretty much their only thing in linear TV now, right?
Yeah, that's like the thing holding it together, right? Like why do you want cable? Like, what do you
think they're doing that?
Sports.
Do you think that's just like it's not profitable for them, it's declining, or do you think it's because they want to go
it's just incredibly
into streaming?
profitable. They just have so they bought Fox, you guys remember this, for $70 billion. So they took on a massive debt load. And Disney streaming is losing so much money. So like the delta between if they put ESPN completely streaming style, which will be very difficult to do, they're gonna lose so much, right? Like the cable bundle is just the greatest business model ever. Like you're getting $9 a subscriber, even if they don't watch any sports, just because it's part of the cable bundle. So he was just basically addressing. So Bob Iger's back. He came back. He replaced Bob Chapek, which was a CEO that he had handpicked, but Bob Chapek did poorly during the pandemic and wasn't able to manage the streaming transition super well. Like he got about 100 million people onto Disney Plus, but since then, as we're seeing, I mean, you mentioned with the actor strike, the writer strike. is like the streaming model also may be broken. It's like maybe you can just pay $30 billion for content every year and think it'll be profitable, because it's not as profitable with cable bundle. But ESPN basically is a crown jewel, which is why they're like, okay, how do we pay off this debt, transition to streaming, and like the parks business is going to keep doing the parks business, right? We keep on bringing new IP in. Like I don't even think they've had a real Marvel ride yet, but they've milked Pixar, they've milked Star Wars, and the ESPN stuff is. I mean, I don't know how much you guys follow the sport. I mean, Bilal, you're a big sports guy. Like you would
but not as much American sports, so I don't know enough about ESPN.
Do you pay for sports streaming?
I don't. Not really.
How do you watch your football matches?
I can't say that legally. No. I mean, I actually have NBC. Like a lot of the Premier League is on NBC, but now they've added like Peacock. You need to pay for that. Then there's like, so I do actually pay for that through a cable bundle, but I also have other ways that I can watch it through streaming, basically. So, yeah.
So the question becomes that who would buy ESPN? Like this asset's worth $40 to $50 billion, right? He's saying he's willing to sell off a piece of it to pay down the debt. But I mean, the names that always come up are like Apple and Amazon, right? Like,
what is it that ESPN owns? Just the brand and relationships with all the leagues and
sports
stuff?
Rights, the sports rights in the league. Actually, Jack, you bring up a good point, because one of the main things they own are the sports rights, but those sports rights expire, right?
Yeah,
so exactly. Like if you're Apple or Amazon, you might just like wait until it expires and throw a massive bang at the sports rights. So
it seems like Amazon's trying to, both of them are trying to peel those off.
Yes.
Like bit by bit, right? Apple's doing a bunch of MLS stuff. I don't know if they have exclusively access to that.
Like even tomorrow night, Arsenal playing MLSL All-Stars preseason, and it's on Apple like exclusively. So you got to sign up for that.
Did you?
Yes. I will tomorrow probably, because I'll do the 30-day free trial. Because I used to use Apple Plus, but I don't really watch anything on there anymore. So I don't even know. Is it the same thing, or is it like a sports thing? I think it's the same.
It's just Apple TV. I think there's just 2 tiers. Maybe.
Oh, got it. Okay. With the sports, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, then YouTube started I think they got some rights to some of the sports stuff. Amazon obviously had some of the NFL stuff. Was it NFL? I think they had.
Amazon, they had a Thursday.
And in the UK, they have some of the Premier League games. So it makes sense. It's just been. I remember when I would think about it like 10 years ago, I was like, why aren't all of these on YouTube? Or there wasn't Amazon Prime really video back then, but on YouTube, because I would watch so much YouTube. And then now the more I learned about it, I was like, oh, it's just because there's like 10-year deals or 20-year deals, and you can't just like put that all on there. And then the second big thing was there weren't as many connected TVs. So you really just, the only reason I paid for cable back then was for live sports. But now everyone has Apple TV, Chromecast, Fire Stick or whatever, or like it's in the TV itself. So to me, long term, I don't know why anyone else would be able to compete with Amazon, Apple, YouTube in this area. I mean, and then Disney, I guess, if they're going to be that fourth player as well. So
it's the YouTube TV stuff do well. Do you know that? Either of you boys know?
I'm not sure, like numbers wise, but I've increasingly heard more people tell me that they have like cable TV through YouTube.
It's expensive, right? It's like $80 a month. But I mean, it's like how much a cable bundle is.
It's slightly cheaper than getting regular cable, but it's closer to that price point.
So the answer is that YouTube's going to win this whole thing, is what you're trying to say.
Maybe.
I mean,
maybe. The weird thing to me is like the UX pattern on YouTube it just doesn't feel natural. So that's why it feels way more normal to get a mix of traditional streaming and live TV through an app that's already doing that. And YouTube, it feels like people are just quite a different behavior than live TV.
You're going to need to get like that NFL thumbnail, but with the stupid face going on.
Or it's like
Tom Brady.
Or you're
clipping it up.
The YouTube thing where you're like in the algorithm going video to video to video is different than looking on Netflix and be like, what are we going to watch?
Yeah, that was Jack last night, because Jack was sending me mad videos on music videos last night. Out of nowhere, he sent me about 12, like Drake turns up a Reading festival. I could tell you down the rabbit hole, bro. I was like, so I love this.
Wait, where was I on these?
It was like it started with a grime UK, some UK music. That's why.
If you want to get on that distribution trial now, we'll make it happen.
Just add it into
that. Well, let me add. That's hysterical. I'll add one more thing. Well, first of all, shout out to George Mack. I think it's the second week in a row. Our boy George. Yeah, he did a crazy thread that went crazy viral. I think one of the things was Netflix is a new TV. Oh no, sorry, YouTube is a new TV.
We gotta get him on there.
Yeah, dude, did you listen to him on Modern Wisdom
I
recently?
sent him. He went on. He's a killer, man. Yeah.
2 hours of straight, just like in the kitchen, man. It was sweet.
I've been speaking to ages about doing a Create Lab, and he was like, I'm not doing pods for ages. We'll do it in person if I come to New York, but I feel like he has actually listened to NI since the beginning, so maybe he'll be up for doing it. But yeah, he's a legend, man. But all right, boys, should we quickly talk about the Hollywood actors strike then? Because I think this is worth talking about. We did briefly talk about the writer's strike, which was several months ago it started. I don't even know when that was. My brain is all over the place. But I think that was at least 3 months ago, no? 4 months ago?
2-3 months ago.
Yeah, and so now there's the next phase of it. It looks like the actors are also striking. I was having lunch with a friend of mine. His wife works in like production, basically, and she's just off now. Like, she's just not, there's nothing to produce. So she's just not working for a while, and everyone, it's kind of a little bit sad because for some of those people, they're not like the, actors that have millions of dollars. They're just kind of waiting around they're normally on contract work, so they're basically out of work for a few months. So yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Is this the same strike that was happening a couple months ago, or did it resume and then come back?
No, there's a Writers Guild and then the Actors Guild. So this is the first time that both of them have been on strike at the same time since the 1960s. And,
crazy.
So
what's the time frame on it so far?
It's been, I think, 3 months. The last writer's strike was 2008, which is what we talked about. That lasted about a year. And of course, we got to mention Stratechery's Ben Thompson, but he's been writing about this extensively. He had a great point, which is like these strikes basically happen over technology shifts. So in the 1960s, the strike was about television. Like, okay, well, television is huge now, and people are doing reruns. What rights do actors have to this, right? They're fighting over that. And Ronald Reagan at the time was actually the head of the Actors Guild, the union. So this is like
mental.
Yeah, you're talking about like this is how he became like the setup for him becoming president. He was like the face of GE for a long time, and then he had this California. He was the governor of California. He was but this is how kind of all started. Man, I can't remember who the comment was from. It was like, oh no, Dean, I think George mentioned it was like that in a remote world, if you're like short, not good looking, and like and not from a Western country, you can compete now, right? But like back in the 60s, you gotta look like Ronald Reagan, right? You gotta look like this. Like in that world, I guess in politics it's still the same now. But this dude is like tall, actor, knows how to manage the screen, which is like when Trump got elected, man. It's like people understand like this form of media is so powerful. But anyways, that was a bit of a tangent. But yeah, so obviously the big one now. So in 2008, the argument was about streaming residuals for the writers. It's like, okay, what percentage to get? And now it's really become about streaming, and a smaller part is about AI, which is, Bilal, do you want to kick off like what the AI?
Yeah, let's talk about the AI part, because we did talk about the streaming stuff quite extensively last time, and I think there's probably some updated stuff, but probably similar themes. So I think the part that's more NA-centric is the AI replicas. So I think my understanding of it from the outside, and Trung, maybe you can tell us exactly what it is, was like a lot of the streamers and the studios are saying we want to basically have rights for the actors and their kind of like replica, the AI replica, forever. So if you act in one film, you can take all of those, still moving images, all that data, process it, and create a Brad Pitt, a Margot Robbie version of them, and then basically in the future you'll be able to create videos using that.
But a good-looking version of Margot Robbie, right? No, like
exactly, not a mid version, because apparently that's the thing, which is insane.
I don't know if people saw this meme last week, but somebody, I don't know who.
Atrocious take.
They're like, oh yeah, by the way, Margot Robbie is mid, like a 7 out of 10, and like it took over the internet.
Anyways, my God.
AI will fix this apparently.
But yeah, so basically that's the thing. So they're going to be able to use that, and so I mean, again, before I give my opinion, I'd love to get your guys' take on that. And I guess before we do that, Trung, was there anything else we want to add color to that before we discuss it?
Yeah, I think a good analogy is like with television, when they're arguing over the rights of television, when you do reruns, right? It's competing against the actor. It's like, okay, if Seinfeld, for example, takes up 5 hours of this network's just on reruns, it's like new content can't break in, right? So if you're like AI, first of all, not only if actors like it seemed like Margot Robbie might lose out a role to AI Margot Robbie, but like 10 other, quote unquote mid actresses, not mid by the way, would also potentially lose out on all that work, right? And I think there's something, Bilal, you said about your friend that's in production, and this is the people don't realize. The average person in Hollywood makes not a lot of money, right? Like if you're up and coming, you're not making 30 mil like Tom Cruise on a film. Like think about all the extras, all the writers, all the people in production. Like they're trying to honestly make a living wage, right? And this is just another, like the writing stuff that we talked about previously was like, okay, you can see how ChatGPT could actually spit something out, even though it's not that great, but it could approximate. Video is a little bit tougher, but now you're talking about just replacing everything. Like it's a little bit crazy, right? So back to the analogy, the reruns is basically you're creating technology that is competing with the human's ability to work. So what percentage are they due for that, right? So that's just
and that's the negotiation part. And so I guess before we get into that, but curious what you guys think. Do you think it will ever actually get to the point where you're creating a film without that actor and just
it's already happening, dude. I mean, like
really at that level?
Well,
where you can't tell the difference?
So for example, Mandalorian, the season 2, at the end, Luke Skywalker shows up. It's like young Luke Skywalker. I mean, you could kind of tell it wasn't fully on, but the technology is only going to get better.
Yeah.
And
that's true,
that's the sad part, which is why I'm actually not crazy about this development, is we're already stuck in this nostalgia loop, right? Like 2 biggest movie or releases of the summer, Indiana Jones, prior to this week, Indiana Jones and Mission Impossible. Harrison Ford is 80 years old. Tom Cruise is 60 years old. It's like, if we just clone them AI and addendum, these movies are actually not doing that well, so maybe we reach the end of milking these franchises.
And it was Top Gun last year.
Yeah, Top Gun crushed it, right?
Barbie's coming up.
Fast and Furious 84.
Yeah, Fast and Furious is also kind of hitting the wall too, right? So yeah, the focus on it is kind of grim, to be honest, man. Well, you had thoughts. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I get it. Because I think my thoughts on this are twofold. The first part is the pure technologist hat on. Is like, this is where things are going. Of course, like we can't like slow down technology. It's going to eventually get to that point. You kind of need to embrace it. But then the other side is like the creative side, where you're on the side of the creative person and the actor and the writers, etc. And I think I end up really veering to that side, which is we want those people and we want that industry to continue to be an amazing part of our lives, right? Like we all love the art that comes out of Hollywood and just TV and stuff like that. And if everything just became this computer generated thing, which is made from an algorithm, and I'm not saying that's necessarily what would happen, but just it's going in that direction, you are missing out on that scarce resource, which is, an actual film where Christopher Nolan comes up with his ideas, someone writes a script, and they shoot it old school style, and then they use the technology to make it better. So I think either way, there's going to be that curve with the technology side. Now, when it comes to straight money, like there could be a deal here where the top 1% of actors make more money than ever without having to work. Like in a build once, sell twice way, visualize value way, you could build once by recording yourself in one film and be Brad Pitt forever. And Brad Pitt, if he was making 50% of royalties instead of 2%, he might be actually happy with that from a money point of view. But a lot of these guys, obviously, money is not the only thing here. Obviously, they all want to be rich, or if they're not already. A lot of them actually love acting. They love the craft of storytelling. They love creating great art, great movies. So I think that's the conflict here, is this old school world where a lot of it is about nostalgia and the way we used to do things, the tradition, the romanticism with shooting on film, for example, even like Succession, right? A lot of that was shot on film, I understand. And like, if they was creating that all through AI, I don't know if it would have that same feeling for us, right? Like, even if it was an amazing piece of art, like we would still be like, I just feel like it doesn't hit the gut as well. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think they do have a point here. Like, if I was them, I would be feeling a little weird that someone could just use my likeness forever. But like anything, I guess any deal, could be a deal on the table where a certain segment of them are happy with it. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't know the terms that have been proposed on that. So they would say, if you participated in this film, we own the IP and we can distribute it as such, right? So it's like your likeness is basically embedded in that asset, and you probably have some royalty agreement with them, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, you get paid on any future use of that they're setting the parameters of what constitutes payment for future AI, but it looks like it's very contentious right now.
Yeah, and that, like, to me, that is it's kind of an undefinable thing. Like, anything that you use as source material and then modify to create something else, like in a film, that seems like a very simple attribution, right? It's like the likeness of this person on the screen for 90 minutes, like being compensated. I'm imagining they'll try and drive down what they're paying for that person's likeness, right? You know what's actually interesting parallel to this? It might be like the Live Golf PGA Tour thing, where you get one or two louder voices that are like, yeah, I'll do it. Let's say if Tom Cruise is like, yeah, let's do it. I don't know what his stake is on it. I think he's on the opposite side of it.
Like
but
Ronaldo going to Saudi, same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like someone like breaks the dam or goes outside of I think as far as like union structures go, that's probably one of the strongest ever, right? Like the concentration and the rules that exist to work with these people that have basically 90% of the distribution. So maybe I'm off on this comparison, but it does feel like some aspect of it is inevitable. And Trung's point about the power law thing is very valid too. It's like not just how this affects compensation, but it's like how it creates this like monolithic outcome where you have the same character. It's not great for documenting the evolution of the craft, even, right? If there's no natural generational progress between the people on screen, in my view, anyway. And then obviously it just gets like A/B tested, like that's how you end up with Avengers 27, right?
Listen, man, they're trying to roll people in.
On
to
paper,
the park.
on paper,
funnel
these
everybody
things,
to the park.
It's like every, not every, but a lot of creative businesses, even in the ad world, like the sexy clients that you want to work for, like which would be the equivalent of the indie movies that you want to publish, that are like scratching your creative itch, blah, blah. You're breaking even or losing money on that, and then you're doing the like telecom banner ads, outsourcing them, doing and like 10,000 versions of them, and that's where you make your money.
You've done that. You've done both of those, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, it's, I don't know, the commodification component of it is definitely not, like, you can see why people are revolting against that. And then just the leverage that creates is the same response to TV, right? It's like, I guess that was cinema, or that was, right? Like showing films in cinema, writers were striking against like a cinema in everybody's house. Am I correct in thinking that, Trung? That's the technological shift.
Is this in the past you're saying way
in
back
the 50s,
in the day?
I'm saying, was that was the thing that people had an issue with, is like, we used to produce this and, play it in one place and people will come and buy tickets, and now it's free to watch at home.
Oh, got
it. It's free to watch, and like completely changes the economics of who wins and loses in that, right? Like the broadcasters get all the money now, and the actors, instead of negotiating one time, they need to start negotiating for, okay, how many times is this going to play? Like, where is it going to... Yeah, exactly, right? Like the unit of television, that media unit, has so many different economics than the theater. So the unit of AI generation will just be, it's like you said, it's like, we can't even, it's so hard to even comprehend what the full contours are. What if somebody just takes you and just throws you in like as an extra in a film, right? Like, is that breaching like where you should get royalties?
But I was going to add one more layer to this really quickly, is like, obviously the top 1% of actors, the ones that everyone knows, they would want to create an AI model and use them again. But what about, we've seen these AI profile picture makers and stuff like that, where they are replacing easily like stock imagery with really, really good AI images. That's already happening, and it's actually pretty good quality. What if I was an actor, like a actual mid-tier actor, right? And now that no one really knows me, I'm not that popular, but I've done a decent amount of shows, and that is now owned by, Disney or whoever, these big studios, and they own that IP. But not only are they going to use my face and my acting skills to create a new version of me, but they're going to combine me with another 5 actors or 100 actors and create a whole new actor character, and it's going to be an AI actor, like completely brand new.
That does not feel cool at all, man.
I mean, I know it's not cool. I'm saying
no, but I mean, like that's kind of like that's a great. I love how you said that, because
that would be another part of the thing
that
would eventually come down the line for sure. If they're going to recreate, like you obviously wouldn't want to not show Margot Robbie or Brad Pitt, but for someone who's an unknown person, you might actually say, "Oh, that person's a great actor, and their body movement is great for this base layer of the AI model."
Man, this guy looks like he walks 8 hours a day and listens to podcasts the entire time.
But we need to replace his face with someone else, or like a made-up version that looks better for screen, is optimized for screen. Like that, 100% there'll be AI actors created. So that is another part. I don't know if that's part of something they're discussing, but that if they sign over their rights, that is 100% going to be part of the. We
kind of touched on this, which is a huge controversy. It's like Midjourney and Dolly are getting sued, right? Because they're like, where did this corpus of images come from?
Exactly.
And you nailed it, man. That's I didn't think about the walking gait as a thing that would be mimicable, but you bring up a great point.
Yeah. Oh, Trung, did you have any other thoughts on it though? Because or Jack, did you finish your point?
No, I got nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to read more about what the proposal is, and is it negotiated between, so these are like 2 entities basically, right? The Writers Guild and the Actors Guild. They're
negotiating
correct?
against something like an organization that represents producers and studios. So like they are negotiating against a single entity.
And that's like, you just like industry standards is the shorthand for that, basically. Yeah,
exactly.
Interesting. I'll have to read up. If you got any good articles on it, Trung, fling them over.
I'll afford many.
Trung, do you know, because you're a writer as in a lowercase j journalist, but you've done stuff in the past, and I don't know how much you can talk about this, but have you ever been a part of any of these things? All right, cool.
Are you on strike right now, Trung?
I am not on strike. I was joking about it.
69K. That's the only thing he's striking against.
I've been telling people like under the table. It was like, I'm not part of any guild. If you need content,
the newsletter writers don't.
Party still goes on.
Let them know if you need content made. You come to this guy.
Well, that's another thing. Like when these things happen, like people rush in and fill the void outside, which
animators is huge. Like Asian animation, just like it's just like there's a vacuum. It just gets sucked in. Right, you're right. It just fills up.
This is going to sound dystopian in this context, but I might be Andreessen, somebody. It's like, if you try and ban the future, it'll happen elsewhere.
Yeah.
So you have I don't think anybody's in a good position in this, except for probably whatever software company is going to be smashing out these videos.
Well, I agree, man. It is
NVIDIA,
right?
NVIDIA, right? The base layer of
the winner of all
human
this
consciousness.
Is NVIDIA.
All right. Anything else on that, Trung, before we move on?
No, that's great. It's time. Let's get Jack cooking.
All right. Let's talk about Threads versus Twitter. There's a couple pieces we should talk about this. Obviously, we did a whole episode last week with our boy Turner. And Jack wasn't here for that, and we wanted to get Jack's take because Jack, you obviously, have built a huge following on both Twitter and Instagram, which us guys haven't done much on Instagram. And so wanted to get your take on how you're first of all finding Threads versus Twitter. And I guess we can touch on, I know it sounds like old news, but it came out after we recorded last week, with the Twitter payouts. A lot of people were sharing screenshots of how much they made. From I think February to July, there were lots of people we know. I don't know if any of you want to share your stuff. It's fine if not, but thousands of dollars a lot of people are making, and they're sharing that online saying Twitter just sent me X amount of money. So yeah, let's start. First of all, Jack, have you been using Threads? And how has it been taking your audience on Instagram for visualized value onto Threads? And how's that experience been so far?
So I went just on the day it came out or the day after it came out, just did the little port over, installed it, got the visualized value handle on there. And someone had a great tweet on this. It's like, how do you get 10 million users in 24 hours? Did you see this one? Have an app with 3 billion users and tell them all to join.
Yeah, brilliant.
So like, I think some of that hype around like the user growth is really, hard to judge the success of it until you have a couple weeks or months of numbers in the tank. But it was like a balloon. It seemed like the air came out of it. Everybody got super excited about it. And you could kind of see the follower count, especially if you have like a large audience on Instagram, because I imagine it prompts people to follow whoever they follow on Instagram, right? So I think in the first day, visualized value went from 0 to 50,000-ish people. I just went back and recycled some old text-based content from a couple of years ago, like the best of the archives.
Right,
and engagement is good. Engagement is good on there, but it's very different. Like the atmosphere of it feels very different to Twitter to me.
Does it feel very much like Instagram though, in terms of like the comments and that kind of audience?
It's just more like docile, I guess, or it's more like PG, PG Twitter or something about it is like a little sterile, like Mark Zuckerberg's replying to Pepsi or whatever, like glad you're here, or that, like
it's more fiat, less ETH.
Exactly.
Like Twitter is like
right?
ETH,
very
monkey
fiat.
pictures, and then
especially for me, like
bit,
my experience between those two things is very different because like so much more time on Twitter. And I think, I don't know if you boys have seen these graphs where I think they're Google search trends for Twitter versus Threads, and it's like huge spike, and it just completely bottomed out over the last week, and then Twitter's just steady demand. I think we've talked about social graphs, like the difference between Instagram and Twitter before, where Threads is building this new social graph based on that same idea in a lot of ways, like people you already follow on Instagram, which is you're not following them for the way they write. But on Twitter, generally, you're doing that, right? So you're porting over the social graph, but then there's a whole new behavior that isn't accounted for in that social graph where majority of people run out of things to say after a day, or they just resort to like, hey, how's it going? It's very like, the old Facebook, like people posting their dinner, hello, like good morning, all of the like standard.
Well, it was like early Twitter, right? It's like getting lunch.
Yeah.
When it was just like a
hello
notification.
World, basically, yeah.
Yeah, because you're not connected to those people for how they write or think or express themselves that way. You're connected because they take great pictures or curate great videos or whatever the case might be. I will say like massive hats off to on the UI of it is so nicely designed.
Nice and slick, right?
Really slick,
quick,
really nice UI, quick. Obviously handled tens of millions of people joining it in a couple of desks. Like the meta advantage, right?
That
just
stack,
very incredible engineering.
The execution was unbelievable.
Incredible,
yeah, very good,
incredible. And like the even little things for me where like the way it handles images and videos is far superior to Twitter because that's obviously their
bread and butter. Yeah,
their bread and butter.
Well, Jack, can I add one really quick thing to what you said about the social graph? Because we talked about it last week as well. But the interesting decision they've made on Threads is they ask you to follow people, but they don't actually have a following tab. So a lot of your feed, I don't know how many people you're following or what you're seeing, but most of the people I see on there, I'm not even following. So they're purposely going after the interest graph approach, which is more TikTok and more like last few years of Instagram. And obviously Twitter is a bit of that, and Twitter kind of changed that when Elon came in. So it is interesting to see if you kept posting over time to see how much, like if you get exposed to way more people, because you've got a massive head start with just having 50,000 people straight away within a few days who are going to engage with your posts. And I'm pretty sure if you kept posting and their user numbers, they're going to go down, I'm sure. But if they kind of maintain enough, I'm pretty sure you'd get in front of lots of new people versus, say, an Instagram where it's more mature. So it's already kind of, you're getting in front of new people, but not as much. So it would be interesting to see how that happens, how that kind of performs for you as someone who's putting out content there.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like anybody who's doing well on Twitter, there is a switching cost, an opportunity cost, you see the thread boys come out in force with like strategies for threads.
Yeah.
Like how you're going to do it.
Threads.
Wait, have
on
you already
threads.
seen it? Have you already seen it on threads? What do you mean on Twitter?
No, I'm saying on Twitter, there's like people like 5 hours
How
after
I'm
threads
growing
about it
up.
was like
Yeah.
how to grow on threads.
Threads, yeah.
Just
Yeah.
ridiculous stuff. And the idea that there's like audience capture there that is a different, it seems, I don't know if doing the same thing on Twitter, on threads, for example, is like expanding the reach of whatever it is you're doing. You have to put your effort one place or another, especially if you're doing it by yourself. Obviously, if you have a big team or whatever, it's a different scenario, but they feel like completely different cultures to me. Even if you're doing the exact same strategy or like operating from the same mentality, it's just received differently. And like the hive mind of Twitter feels way more developed than the hive mind of threads.
I love that, man. That's such a the hive mind. Just everybody knows what to do, right? It's like because like even now threads, which I've seen, not only Jack, you mentioned the Google Trends thing, some third party app analytics has looked at the retention numbers and they look awful. I mean,
I saw that,
I bet 90% of people drop off. That would be my assumption.
It's just it's way too early to say that either direction, which is why when you see the history on us from both sides, like, oh, it's over for Twitter or it's over for threads, it's like, it's
too
way
early.
too early, right?
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, Trung. There's one other great tweet. I can't remember. It might have been Austin Allrad. Is that his name? He wrote like the worst way to launch
sorry, I forgot the school. Bloom Tech. Yeah.
That's it. I think he wrote this. The worst way to kickstart a social network is to take all of the people that are like massively upset about another social network and attract them with that, right? It's like that is not gonna create an environment of like, if the only thing you have in common is hating the old version of this thing, it doesn't really lead to like exceptional conversations happening off the bat. Yeah. And I think it is that just like network maturity thing and the behavior, the way people interact. It's a crazy wave of hype and everybody gets caught up in that. And then you think through it a couple more days and like, I see how the things that make Twitter successful are not just the fact that you can post 280 character tweets, right? It's like compounding connections over decades and decades. And it also has this, we reference this fairly frequently as like people announce like legitimate news on Twitter, right? Like it's world leaders have Twitter accounts, governments have Twitter accounts, like corporations share blah, 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 blah content on Twitter. And Instagram does have that way more, it doesn't really cross the casual divide, right? You don't really think about it as, there's a distinction between like
default public
seriousness.
too, right? Like with Twitter as well. It's like you're like, I'm making an announcement. I mean, obviously people do.
That's true.
Like a text screenshot or something where they put it on Instagram sometimes, but there is a lot more of a mix of private versus public by default. I don't know. Sorry, go on. Keep saying what you're saying.
No, you're right about that too. I don't even know how that works on the Threads app. I think maybe if you have a default
public, but I think you could probably, I think some people I saw, I had to follow them similar to Instagram, like they followed me and then I would go to follow back and it says waiting for a request. Exactly. So I think that is interesting, especially for like a text-based platform.
Yeah, that's strange. Yeah.
It feels like I mean, I know some people have private stuff on Twitter too, but it's generally, I think the active people are mostly public from my lip. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I think it is. So
I would imagine that's true. Yeah, just the like incentive-wise, they just people want to reach as many people as possible.
As they can. Their numbers go up, and they want to. Yeah, exactly.
Which the last point we were going to make is the Twitter monetization thing. I know we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, let's just let Trung back in. We had our weekly Canadian Wi-Fi issue, so here's Trung. Trung, he didn't. Trung, he had to go top up his card what we were bringing up, Trung, which kind of transitions us into the last part of this, which was the move that it was only last week, I think. So it was just after we recorded, but Twitter, people started posting screenshots of the Twitter payouts. So for a lot of prominent creators, people have been on the show, even some of them have shared it. A lot of the people I saw, there was a thread here from, is it Tiffany Zong, TZHONGG. I can share this with Rafa so we can put it in the show notes, but there was like a roundup of all the different people saying how much they earned, basically. And it was at Internet Hall of Fame, 107,000.
Over 5 months. So let's
over
put that
5
over 5
months,
months.
yeah. So 20K a month, I guess. Andrew Tate, 20K. Another one, 10K. You know, so I saw quite a lot of people within a certain range. Hallmark's catalog, 6.2. He's been on the pod, obviously. So yeah, Nick Huber, our boy, Nick Huber, 2.2K. That's actually surprisingly low for him. He needs to, those rookie numbers, Nick. You're going to need to get him up, mate.
You think he's the farmer of the decade, man.
Yeah, farmer of the decade. Anyway, so that was...
I mean, spoiler alert, I got some chatter, but I'm a discreet individual. I want to keep that...
Respect. Real G's moving silence like lasagna. There we go.
I appreciate that. I certainly appreciate it. I'd actually love your guys' thoughts on the move. So first of all, there is a lot of media coverage on this saying that it is a bribe to keep creators on the platform. But
That's
to be
ridiculous.
clear, Elon made this commitment in February.
Way before,
they're working on this, And it's just that media spin on this, calling it like a bribe for right-wing users, that's what I'm like, oh my God.
That's crazy.
It's mad. Like you're saying a New York Times is bribing you to write this, or whatever.
It's just like, I'm like, oh my God.
That's so silly, man.
I'm like, listen, is everything that Twitter has done spotless in Twitter 2.0? Of course not. But this spin as like somebody that got some, and like on the inside, I'm like, this is so insane.
How is this not? This is the anyone who wants to write and create stuff is getting paid a significant amount of money. It's like the opposite of, like, it's also not like divided by right and left. It's
like you're
literally
trying to create like a okay,
crazy.
YouTube, the biggest whale ever, pays out what, 20 billion of their 40 billion revenue, right? So like Twitter paid off about 5 million in total, and you had to be part of the Twitter Blue program, which is made about 15 million.
Yeah.
So like we're talking
15.
Yeah, like 15. Well, hold on, let's do the numbers. There's about I think there's almost 1 million now. Twitter Blue. Okay, so that's actually that's closer to 50 to 100 mil. Sorry, my numbers are off there. Napkin math. I've been corrected by Jack. He was just like, "Oh, Trunk, that is not correct."
Wait, anyway, you said there's 1 million people paying, and that was at $10 a month.
That's what I saw was 800,000 to 1 million. I don't know how much people churned.
Yeah.
So these are not apples to oranges number. I mean apples to apples numbers. But the ballpark is this: you have to be part of Twitter Blue to do it. So even if we just napkined it, it's called 500,000 people paid annual for Twitter Blue. That's 500,000 people paying 100 would be 50 mil. So the payout here is about 10% of that. This is the rawest napkin math. So there's more to come. So first of all, I think this is one-time payment, and I think Elon has said, and the team has signified they want to get close to the YouTube number, right? So I think these numbers will go up. But the point is this: is like social media is so crazy that like, have you seen the Twitter the payout numbers? Jack, you probably know this from your reels. What are your reels and YouTube short payouts for the hundreds of millions of views?
It's nothing, right?
It's nothing. A complete dog shit.
Well, TikTok is notoriously really bad. It's quite funny because a lot of the time you would compare this with like a CPM, like a cost per thousand is the advertiser side, but it's more like a RPM is called. So it's like for 1,000 views or 1,000 impressions, how much did you get paid? So I didn't see that in those terms. Did you have any idea what they were for this?
That's the other thing is like people were just like, okay, how many people actually got this, and like what were the terms involved? I mean, those are gonna have for this to truly stick, because I think this was a huge media coup though. It was like, mine is how they tried to spin it, but like you got paid to tweet, right? Like that is the headline.
No, it's a massive move.
Yeah, it's a massive move. I mean, one downside I did see, Internet Hall of Fame actually tweeted, the guy that got the 6-figure check, he's like, already started seeing people jacking his shit. And his shit is just collected from like the best Reddit, Instagrams, and tweets.
Yeah, like how can you say that?
Yeah.
No, but what's funny, right?
I
know. It's hysterical. It's funny. Good for him for having that catalog. But I mean, like, I think you might start seeing like money now. We're about to find out what is the incentive of the behavior on the platform.
You know, one of the I guess contrarian takes on that is that it contributes to civility in some ways, because the desire to reply with something that draws attention to the original thing is basically getting the person paid. You know what I'm saying?
It's a balancing, like a counterweight, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you can dunk on this person,
but they're gonna get paid. Yeah,
they're gonna get paid. Yeah.
So it's like,
Frank, just to clarify, you guys both probably know, it was based on replies? Is it only ad impressions in the replies? In the replies, which is quite a small amount of your overall impression. Because when I heard that announced originally, I was like, oh, that sounds super small. I was like, how much is that even going to add up to? So I saw some other people sharing the number of impressions their account got for the whole month or whatever. And they were comparing, which isn't a fair comparison.
But this is where it's tricky, because you can't put, I mean, you know this, Bilal, you can't put if you're in the feed, how do you
how do you attribute that to that user? Because there's several users.
There's 5 tweets in one thing, whereas
so maybe you would
share,
but I don't know.
But this is
the way YouTube does it, like YouTube has the ads, the actual, ads that are run on there, but then they also have a percentage for subscriptions.
Oh,
so if someone's, I even see from Creator Lab, it's a tiny amount that I get, but there's, I think it's 10% of the AdSense money comes from like subscriptions, people paying. So the way it works there is how, like the percentage of time they spend watching your stuff or something like that. So there is a way to do it. So I think there could be a way that Twitter does this longer term, which is around engagement numbers, impression numbers, not just, because I feel like replies feels very...
No, but Bilal, let me ask you, you're the product, you had a product now on Twitter. How do you increase the ad inventory so it's more attributable? Like, obviously they're making a push for video. That's one piece, right? There's probably pre-roll, mid-roll coming for more video content on Twitter. What other inventory are you putting out there that can be attributed to a single individual?
No, I think very clear. I think you're right. I think you're right, actually. Well, the video obviously would be the one like that really lean in, because also video CPMs cost more because people want like video ads and stuff. You generally can charge more for moving images and stuff like that. But you're right. The problem they have is the replies you can directly attribute to that one user because that's the only tweet on the screen. So okay, this is their share, but it's missing a massive chunk of the overall pie that person's contributing in the first place. But I don't know how you fix that, but there must be a way to see.
Let me throw a couple ideas.
The algorithm understands that this tweet is doing well because someone slowed down on it, etc. Then there might be a way to have like active impressions or something like that.
There's a couple ideas that I saw. Actually, Holmar's catalog threw a couple out there. It was previously on the pod. He's like, the long tweets help because can you insert ads in the long tweets? Because you can do 4 photos now. Can you do a system where you allow people to like add their name handle to your tweet, like brought to you by XYZ, like this tweet. Like there's some move. The other one, actually,
man.
Hold on. Alex Cohen, friend of the pod, Ashley's like, they should bring back fleets because that's the easiest ad inventory ever.
What was the fleets again?
It was literally
the stories, right?
Yeah.
Oh, like the stories.
Full screen, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're doing the full screen. Here's my 6 best tweets or things that's on the day. Well, ad.
It's like Instagram stories,
5. And that motion that people are so used to the thumbing, right? It's just, I mean, Bilal's talked about his ad nauseum. He knows the drill. It's just a difficult. The DNA of Twitter is just not great for advertising.
Some of that stuff would be like the advanced, like it's what it's called like viewable impressions essentially. So it's that someone's actually been on it and engaged with it versus just scanning through very quickly. So, but that again, as a creator, if I was tweeting out and I was seeing my overall impressions were 100 million a month, and I'm only able to monetize 20% of that because of some arbitrary algorithm I have no insight into, I would be a little bit annoyed. But more so right now, I would look at, I mean, you, without showing your numbers, you might be able to see what you were paid for, let's say Trung or Jack, of your overall monthly impressions, because you can see that in Twitter analytics, right? Like you can see your monthly analytics numbers, and you can say, I don't know when they paid out. Did they say like you were paid X amount because of these impressions, or did they give any more details?
No, it's literally the screenshots that you showed. It's like,
oh, it's literally that. It's like, oh, that's crazy, because there's literally no insight. It's like a bit
I haven't
of a black
dug
box.
any further into, like, I just saw that.
I wonder if in the analytics, because normally you would see that in analytics.
That's a good point. I will check that out.
You have to hit 5 million impressions a month to qualify for
eligible.
it. I think people,
yeah. All right,
I mean, the other thing, I don't know if this will come up as an issue, the idea of brands choosing what accounts to advertise under without your permission. So if I'm like, I want to get in Trung's replies, and I'm going to do like, I'm literally going to make ad creative for Trung's replies about, you know, some probably financial product. That's a way higher CPA, right? Than just like, I'm like going to rely on programmatic placement. I don't know if Bilal, if that makes any sense to you, but you can put like contextual shit in there.
Yeah, because it's a good point, because that's the equivalent.
Sorry, bid for inventory under a viral tweet.
Yeah. So like the equivalent of that would be on YouTube. Generally people would say, I want to reach these sort of people who are interested in these topics or whatever, and it isn't necessarily like Trung's making, you know, NIA content about not investment advice, not finance, blah blah blah, tech, whatever. It would be like someone happens to be watching that, but we also know they're in market for a mortgage right now, so they get a mortgage ad. They're also in market for a vacation to Spain, so we're going to show them an ad for that. But there is another way, which is called basically like managed placements, where you could actually say, I want to bid and show ads on these 100 channels, 1,000 channels, and you can manually add them.
That's very
so you
high
could say,
touch.
I want to bid on all of Trung's tweets or all of Jack's tweets.
I want to take over for a month or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that would actually be that would be quite sick, actually, because then they would directly get, I mean, as an advertiser, that's really, that would be very useful.
And imagine if Trump got to approve the creative too.
Dude, this is alpha right now. The Bilal, this is it. Digital Bilal's like, oh, by the way, I got some ideas for you.
Clicks make the world go around, bro. That's it. No, but it is interesting. But I think they would always want to veer away from anything that requires any human interaction. So they don't want to add any friction for someone like even Trung approving. Normally, it's kind of like a disapproval. It's normally like you would then go in your Trung publisher analytics and look at, you would look at all the the advertisers that ran on your Trung channel or Trung's tweets. And you would say, oh, someone's trying to shield Viagra pills. I don't want that associated with me. Let me add that. Or you would add like big category negatives. So you'd say like not anything explicit, not like, you know, gambling, whatever.
However,
stuff like that.
If you sell that like a mandolin that cuts vegetables quickly, come in my feed.
There we go. Key. That's key. But anyway, they're really interesting. Jack, are you going to keep using Threads for a while, or what? How are you feeling about it?
I'm already off it, boys. I'm already stopped.
Churned?
Off the game.
Already churned. I mean, I'm not opposed to it at all. It's just a time I spent elsewhere.
Is LinkedIn more useful for you?
LinkedIn is then Threads, yes, but they're both very close to no use.
IG and Twitter are the two biggies.
Jack, you post everything in Twitter itself, right? Like the actual Twitter app.
You don't have a team.
No, not just a team, but you know, there's like back in the days like Hootsuite and all these different things.
Yeah. No, I go straight to. I used to use the schedulers, but now the Hive Mind thing, it's like you don't know what's going on, right? You don't want to be posting into some like, you know.
Somebody did put a hilarious tweet. Well, on January 6th, it's like.
They're talking about
my
Charlie Munger quote.
Today is not the day for SaaS discounts.
Right.
Yeah, that's hilarious. All right, perfect. Trung, any other thoughts on that, mate? You're obviously a big creator, one of Elon's favorite Twitter follows, I'm sure.
You know what, man?
How do you feel about it?
I want Twitter to win. I think we talked about last week. You don't want Threads being the global town square, right? We talked about last week. And for a lot of, Jack brought up some of the reasons just from aesthetically, like that's just not my vibe, which is fine. People can have that vibe. And we also talked about last week is like, this censorship that's already happening on Threads, I don't see the screenshots. Maybe it's anecdotal, but it's like they're already like, because they're brand safe, right? They're just like slamming everything down, which is their right. That's their platform. But man, the Twitter hive mind, I love how Jack put it. It's like, I agree with Jack 100% about, like, I used to have a scheduler. I used to plan tweets. Now I just like literally, I just like opening it, like
off
You
the
gotta
dome.
feel it. You gotta
in
feel
the
it.
water,
Mm.
like that, just seeing what like a fish
They're
in the
normally
water, see
the
what's
best ones as
happening.
well. They're just off
You
the
know
dome
what?
as
It's
well.
just like flip it open, see what the vibe is, and just like, okay, let me get into this, right? And yeah, man, I don't think it's ever going to be recreated. Maybe the halcyon days, maybe this is as good as it'll ever get. But if we just keep the 2021, 22, maybe 2021 will never come back. Like a lot of people already left, but like this vibe, like let's try to get some of it back, but let's not try to F around these other platforms, man. Twitter is where it's at.
Obviously, it's hard to compare versus 2021, like you were just saying, but I'm assuming your reach on Twitter is the most it's ever been, right? Because you've got the most followers, or not really?
We talked about the algo changes, like because it's
Did
some
they
of the
hit you a
algorithm.
little
Yeah,
bit?
I think it's hit everybody, like trying to figure out like how to get into For You versus, oh, you have a lot of followers. There were definitely periods like right after Elon's takeover where there'd be like you just had no idea what was going on with the algo. I think it's settled a bit in the sense of like it's approximating enough of what I expect for where I'm at. But it's like Jack said, it's like I think the key is this: you have to get into that hive mind, like these people that preset stuff and like have all these long things written out, they don't understand why it doesn't hit. It's because you haven't earned it, man. You're not in the hive. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if you guys see that viral video of Tiger Woods. I love Rafa to pull it up. He's talking about like some of these golfers coming up and like you kind of take shortcuts. He's like, you know, the problem with these people that take shortcuts is like, it's not that they haven't earned it. It's like the feeling of actually winning is like, you literally haven't earned it. It's like the feeling of versus me, like of like Tiger Woods, it's like I spent 30 years earning this or 20 years earning this. Like that feeling is very different. It's like people are trying to just jump in and try to win at this quote unquote game because it is a game. Right? At the end of the day, you can choose to play it or not. But it's like I love Jack thing. It's the hive mind, man. It's like you got to get into it.
Yeah.
Nothing's ever going to be given to you. Everything's going to be earned. If you don't go out there and put in the work, you don't go out and put in the effort, one, you're not going to get the results. But two, more importantly, you don't deserve it. You didn't earn it.
Cool. Yeah, love it, man. It's good to get both your takes on that. All right. Anything else on that, boys, before we wrap it up? How
I'm
you
good,
feeling?
man. If Jack wants to cook on the
Jack, did you want to talk
affiliate?
last? Should we talk about the president, like maybe 5 minutes, or you want to save it? How you feeling?
I mean,
let's do it.
it's a good little cap off on the monetization thing. Like,
actually, go for it. Yeah.
So Vivek, I'm gonna completely butcher his last name. I'm gonna pull it up right now.
He's a Republican presidential candidate.
Vivek Ramaswamy. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So he's a Republican, like outside, like a non-favorite Republican presidential candidate, and he announced something, I think a couple of weeks ago now, that I pinged to you boys in the group chat about launching a fundraising initiative where the people responsible for the fundraising, like grassroots fundraising, would get 10% of the money that they raised for the campaign.
Incredible. Wow.
Incredible. And the way he framed it was, this is how politicians raise money right now. Like they they pay consultants 50, 60, 70% of what they raise. So you're educating people on...
He just open it up to the crowd.
Decentralize it, man. Cut the middleman out. And you know what it reminds me of? You remember when the Uber discounts first came out and people were doing these crazy marketing campaigns to get their Uber credits maxed out? You probably know a few people in that world, Bilal. You weren't running a few.
I might add a few myself.
Yeah.
Get some Uber Eats credits. Yeah.
So obviously there's a massive backlash to the idea of people not in positions of quote unquote authority doing this, but very interesting, transparent approach to how fundraising actually occurs now. The one thing I think would be this is really the crux of the conversation we're having about Twitter too, is if an individual that doesn't represent an organization of some kind has carte blanche to say anything in order to get people to like stare, look, engage, blah, 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 are you incentivized to do untruthful things or like ridiculous things or brand damaging things? You know, like what's the woman that's going around TikTok at the moment? Ice cream.
Oh yeah.
Yum yum.
I'll give context. There's a TikToker. I think her name's Pinkydoll.
That's it. Yeah.
She figured out this live stream. Like she's going super viral. She just goes on these live streams. I think Rafa just threw it up. Yeah. She just saying like everything Jack's saying, like ice cream, slurp slurp, and like gang gang, and like you watch it, you have no idea. But what she's doing is she's responding to what people are gifting her. These like TikTok gifts, like ice cream cones and like the letters GG and yeah, man, like so this is the point. TikTok pays shit. This is how she's found a way to make money on it. I support it, man.
How is she making money through that?
Those gifts she gets. So
people give it's like Twitch.
Like an ice cream cone is the equivalent of
$1 cash them out or something.
Yeah. So she gets these coins, like ice cream's 1 cent. She wears a cowboy hat sometimes. That's 99 cents. So she gets all these coins.
So ridiculous.
So this
thing are they like transferable? You can like
she can cash it out. So the thing is like what people understand is like this is huge in Asia, right? This has been going on live stream Asia for a decade, and I mean, like a lot of things in Asia, when you bring it over to the West, it's just like, yo, what is going on in Asia, right?
Yeah.
But Trung, I saw Jason Calacanis. He reshared your video of that.
Oh, did he?
I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, he reshared your video of it. Where it says like Trung's video, which obviously you took it from somewhere else as well. And he said like 50 years of innovation leading to this. What a sad time or something like that. I'm like, I'm not saying exact words. And, but like, I agree with what you said. Like, first of all, the context was completely missing from what he was sharing. It looked like, on its own, it looks like a ridiculous thing, right? Like people just saying wild things. But like, she's actually just engaging with people and she's found a way to do it. Like,
I used to take a train for 45 minutes a day to put numbers into a spreadsheet, and I hated my job. Like this, like let's not pretend like 90% of jobs are good, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, so she gets to do it from home. She has a child. Like if that's her work, that's incredible.
It's her choice, and if people like it, it's their choice to like it too.
For it.
They're paying for it.
Economic energy is changing hands, boys.
Economic energy.
What's funny, guys, we're not going to get to it, but like when the XRP, not a security, there's a big SEC issue. We saw crypto rip a bit, but we're here till 69 people. Like let's
still standing.
Right now. We're still standing.
BlackRock ETF approval.
Yeah, it's coming.
Our guy, the CEO, is on a press tour right now. He's literally sounded like a watered down version of Michael Saylor. Yeah, exactly.
That's dude. When Larry Fink, can you guys imagine? Let's end on this.
Oh my God.
Larry Fink goes on CNBC and says a crypted wall of energy. It's over.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we're getting close.
It's done.
Somebody put it in Mid-Journey. Just take Saylor on a podcast and just transpose it.
Oh my God,
Larry
that's
Fink.
incredible.
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, he's getting close because he started saying stuff like this is like digital gold. He's saying kind of like 4-year-old.
There is no second best.
Yeah, exactly.
Engine. Well, dude, it's just so funny. It's just so funny because we saw, when Saylor caught religion and like dude,
incredible.
If Larry Fink is catching the same religion, it'll be the funniest thing ever read.
You just see him, he starts sounding like, all of them, By the way, just before we do close up, I do want to clarify one thing because I said when you said on Vivek, I don't know anything about him as a candidate, but I will say I looked him up. He's 37 years old. Pretty incredible that he's running for president.
Biotech entrepreneur.
And he did some asset management or something after as well, maybe?
Yeah, he worked, I think he went to Yale Law School, Harvard undergrad.
I'm sure he's a smart guy.
Hedge fund, and then went into bio, but as a financier, not as a scientist. Like his background is like, how do I find stranded assets? And then I don't know how successful he was actually bringing these things to market, but he made a ton of cheddar. Which is why
so I'm sure he's a smart guy. I don't know anything about him, but and when I said that's incredible, I meant like that's a hilarious, incredible thing that's happening.
Yeah,
that
he's not picking candidates. We don't want to get canceled.
No, not just that.
We can swing elections on this pod, boys.
Yeah, we go exactly.
Cool off.
More so, what I meant to clarify is I actually generally. I don't love that so much money is in politics in the first place. But if it's going to be in this if we're in the US and that's how it works, then good for him for playing to the rules or like being a little innovative. But generally, I think it's one of the biggest problems with the actual political cycle is that it's all based on, and it creates all these terrible incentives and stuff like that. But anyway, that's bringing down the mood so we can move on from that. But just wanted to clarify that in case it ever gets pulled up. But anyway, all right, boys, anything else before we log off? Because I think that was a solid, strong episode.
Cooked, man. Anytime.
All of us here. It's always the best when we're all three of us here.
Yeah, just get us
It's always
back.
the best. Back in the game. All right. Let us know what you think of that, boys and girls, in the comments. And we will see you guys again next week. We appreciate all the support. See you next week. Cheers.
Peace out, guys.
Right.